Trail and make up your own mind. C-SPAN's Campaign 2020, your unfiltered view of politics.
Presidential candidate Senator Michael Bennet filed his official candidacy paperwork at the New Hampshire State House and met with potential primary voters at a town hall with employees and the public at Relico, a specialty paper company. Later, he attends a house party hosted by Marjorie Smith, a state representative.
Well, should we go in and do this?
All
right,
yeah.
Let's go do it.
Go for it.
Do I have a check?
Fran Murphy.
Hey, how are you, Fran? Very nice to see you. Thank you.
Check and paperwork are already up there for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Come on in.
Thank you.
Open for business.
We actually have the language right out of the Constitution, the requirements.
I'm just proofreading our good work.
Just right in here.
Yeah.
You sign here. That's how it. You want it to be Michael, not Mike.
No, that's fine. Had I known I was going into politics, I would have been Mike, not Michael, but I didn't know.
You could have Mike.
No, that's okay. That's fine. So do you want me to?
Yeah.
Right here?
Sign.
Right here. Thank you very much. There's your
This is
fee.
That's the same. And this. Whoa. Have a. I usually do it in blue. So what this is, this is a notice that we send out to the voters that gets publicly posted in every community in the state, and as a sort of remembrance of the filing, we ask the candidates to either put their campaign slogan
Sure.
or something that they wish to say at the time.
Thank you.
For the kids.
For the kids.
For the kids? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So we're gonna go back.
okay.
You can say a few
Great.
things if you want.
Shall I say something now, or-
But then we'll come back. So
You can do
take
both.
the questions.
Okay, we'll take the questions in back. So I'll just say I'm just delighted to be here to file my paperwork in New Hampshire. We are really excited about this. The Secretary of State and I were talking about the example of Gary Hart, another Colorado senator who was able to find traction in New Hampshire and actually win here, coming from far behind in the polls. I think we can do a similar thing in this race, because I believe that we are where New Hampshire's voters are, where the not just the base of the Democratic Party is, but where independent voters in this state are as well. And I know enough about what Jeannie Shaheen has done to get elected and Maggie Hassan has done to get elected, to know what it takes to get elected and to win in New Hampshire. So that's why I'm here. I believe it's incredibly important for Donald Trump to be a one-term president, because we have to beat him, but we've also got to figure out how to govern the country again for the interests of our children. We need a president who actually cares about your kids and my kids. I don't think Donald Trump cares about America's kids, and I think in many ways he's the least patriotic president that we've had. So I'm looking forward to this campaign in New Hampshire. The weather is beautiful outside today. The leaves are gorgeous, and I know New Hampshire's only beginning to make up their mind. So I feel like I'm here at exactly the right moment, and I thank you very much for your help. Thank you. Okay? And thank you for being here.
This is the desk of the sponsor
Of the bill?
Well,
family
it's the gaggle room, and he'll
That's
take
some good
questions.
history. Okay.
I want to follow up on that. I mean, A, you have the resources right now to expand your operation here and to go up on air here in the state?
We have the resources to expand our operation, and we hope to be able to go up on air in the state.
And then
I expect to be able to go up on air in the state.
Just a couple hours ago, we had another senator, Amy Klobuchar, also from the middle of the country.
We could have carpooled.
Yeah, it would have been great. But she's making many of the same arguments you are,
Yeah.
as is that mayor from Indiana
Yeah.
and the former vice president. So what makes you stand out
Well,
from those others?
I think that in many ways, I just am better situated than all of them. You know, I'm a completely different generation than either Mayor Pete or Vice President Biden. I'm in between them in terms of age. I'd make an argument that that's a pretty good age. I have worked at the local level like Mayor Pete, but my school district had a budget that was 3 times bigger than his city's budget. And on top of that, I've spent 10 years in the Senate, actually in some of the most important bipartisan discussions that we have had as a country over that 10-year period on immigration and on health care and on education. And I've been at the center of all of those battles, and I've learned a lot about the way the place works. I think it's and doesn't work, most importantly, and what has to change for it to fix it. So I think I've got the right set of experiences, and I believe that the experience of being in business and being a school superintendent is distinct from others in this race who have been prosecutors or lawyers. I just think it's useful to have somebody in the White House that knows something about our schools and our classrooms and knows how to read a balance sheet and an income statement. I mean, that may sound novel, but I think it's useful. All right, thanks.
Thanks very much, Senator.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Good to see you.
See you too.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Thank you. Nice seeing you too. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good seeing you. All right. Thanks for making the trip.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
May I suggest an analogy to Scooter Libby and Dick Cheney and the outing of the whistleblower?
That's an excellent analogy.
I do think you need that
It is.
indignation. That was
It is.
perfect when you did it. I'll get this up on
You got it.
Facebook for you.
Should we turn it around
All
so
right.
that
We'll get-
there you
we'll
go.
see if we can get 1 million people to see this on Facebook.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Keep coming.
All right. All right. See you. Thanks, everybody. Hi.
Thank you so much.
Michael Bennet.
Paula, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. How are you? Hi, I'm Michael. Nice to meet you. Hi.
Diana.
Michael
Nice to meet
Bennet.
you.
Very nice. Thank you for letting us impose on you. I really
for coming
appreciate
in.
it. Thanks.
appreciate that.
Thank you. All right. Thanks. Good to see you. Thank you.
Every day.
Thanks for being here. All right. Okay. All right. Michael Bennet.
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Nice to
Michael
meet you.
Bennet.
We have wonderful guests from Alabama. They work in, you all work in the legislature?
Good to see you.
And Virginia. Well,
I'm betting that if you put those two legislatures together, they wouldn't equal the number of legislative seats here in New Hampshire. But it's great to see you guys.
yes.
And who are these guys? Can I just say?
So wait, so if we could give, these are the students from Trinity Christian School in Keene, New Hampshire.
What grade are you guys in?
Fifth and sixth.
Fifth and
Sixth,
sixth.
seventh, and eighth.
Wait, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth?
Yeah.
And
This is small middle school.
and middle school?
Yeah.
And what are you here to learn about today? Oh, can I tell you who I am, by the way? My name's Michael Bennet. I'm a United States Senator from Colorado, though. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Colorado. Have you?
I have.
Your brother lives there?
My dad's been
My family lives there. So
Great.
My dad's friend lives there.
We're known for our mountains.
Yeah,
But,
I've seen them.
Huh?
Yeah, I've seen them.
You have? Thank you very much. Well, yours are very beautiful, too. They're different, but it's beautiful.
My dad has been skiing on the Colorado mountains before.
So what are you learning here today? Have you started? Have you had a tour?
Yeah, we were just learning about
start-
the flags.
Mm-hmm. Did you learn a bit?
Being the first in the state.
Yeah. There are a whole bunch of flags in there that were in the Civil War. Did you see those?
Yeah.
Good, good.
And Senator, boys and girls, do we want them to sign our guest book? Yeah. All right.
Oh, yeah, I left that part out.
So we have our guest book and
Great.
the sign. And I'll
Okay, so would it be better for you if I
either
use that?
whichever you would like to use.
Okay, thank you. Well, Amy Klobuchar.
She was here this
I
morning.
know, I told him upstairs that we should have carpooled. Because I saw her just last night. Okay.
And the sign, we're putting signs all up. We'll add you to the, we're going to have to get a bigger wall here at the New Hampshire State House. We've noticed every time someone's signing papers, everyone gets quiet. It's like, don't distract them while they're signing.
So I wrote, thanks for caring about our kids, because these guys probably do this all the time. So
We do. And Senator, our one last tradition is we like a picture with the candidate.
I'd be honored.
So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Where are we looking?
Right here. This guy.
Okay, great.
Huh? Thank you, Kim.
All right.
Thank you, Senator. It's been an absolute
It's
pleasure.
very nice to see you.
Thank you very much.
What's the lunch situation for you guys?
Lunch situation.
You already had lunch.
You brought your own?
Yeah.
Have you had it yet? What time is it?
Yeah.
And then
Wait for lunch.
are you going back to school this afternoon, or are you done for the day?
This is our school.
This is
This
our
is?
school.
For the day.
For the day. Well, that seems pretty good. Well, it's nice to meet you. You have to know that your teachers are very special people, because it is only very, very special people teach middle school.
That's right.
Isn't that true?
People who have.
Good to see.
Thank you.
A lot of patience. A lot of patience. Yeah, we could use some middle school teachers actually down in the U.S. Senate, because you need a lot of patience down there too.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So as technology keeps moving forward, and corporations are always after the bottom line and becoming more and more efficient, how do you see the issue of job loss due to automation?
We already haven't reacted to the job loss that we've had from the last revolution in automation, as you know, and including the job loss that we've had because of automation in agriculture, which people don't often think of agriculture, but there's been an enormous amount of job loss there because of that. I think a couple things. One, we got to make sure our tax policies are rewarding work in this country and not necessarily automation. And when we think about a company like GM that still employs a lot of people, they don't employ nearly as many as they used to, but still employs a lot of people, they pay a lot of payroll tax, and the people that work there pay a lot of payroll tax. You look at a company like Amazon, and which is one of the most profitable companies in the world, and they're not paying any taxes at all. That, to me, suggests a problem, because why are we not incentivizing work instead of incentivizing job loss? So that's one part of it. The other part of it, I think, is the education answer, because these kids are going to have to be in the position to be able to react to a velocity of changes that we never had to, and that this last generation never even knew existed. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is if they're prepared to do it. And the only way they're going to be able to do it is if they become lifelong learners, so that during the course of their lives they can adjust and get the skills and knowledge they need to be able to earn a living wage in an economy that you and I can't even begin to imagine. The disruption is going to be enormous. There'll be a lot of opportunities as a result of that disruption as well, but we're going to need to be flexible. And the way to be flexible is to be knowledgeable, and the way to become knowledgeable is to get a decent education. And by the way, not an education that was designed in the 19th century, but one that is actually coming to grips with the 21st century.
Michael, we have time for one more
Okay. Is that a lie, or is that true? How about if I have much shorter answers? I'll take a couple more. Yes.
I want to know how tough you can get.
Okay.
Because you're a little too nice.
Do you want to arm wrestle right here?
I would, but I'd probably beat you.
I'm not willing to take that risk.
I'll tell you why I'm asking.
I'm unwilling to take that risk.
A long time ago, I worked really hard for Dick Gephardt.
Yeah.
And he was too nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
My own son-in-law said, he can't make it, Deb. He's just too nice.
Right.
And you seem too nice. How tough can you get?
So, first of all, I'm the parent or the father of 3 daughters, so that makes a person tough. I have been a school superintendent, which really makes a person tough. Well, so you know, and congratulations, because I'm sure the pay is really good.
I can buy lunch once.
Right. And thank you for doing that, by the way, because I know how tough it is. But it is hard, when you're changing the way school has operated for generations and engaging the community on that. It was a daily battle, but it always felt worth doing. And I don't think anybody in that context ever thought I wasn't tough enough or didn't have the courage of my conviction. and also wasn't open-minded and was listening for new information to be able to make better decisions or change my mind. And sometimes that's, in my mind, a sign of toughness, is your willingness to learn a new fact and have that adjust the way you approach life. That's out of vogue in our politics. Nobody does that anymore. But the older I get, the less certain I am of what I think on every single issue, and the more interested I am in hearing from other people. I had an occasion a while ago to have a conversation with Ted Cruz on the floor of the Senate when the Trump had shut the government down. And Cruz was out there talking about how unfortunate it was that our Coast Guard wasn't getting paid, which I believed also was unfortunate. The only thing is, I knew that Ted Cruz had shut the government down when Colorado had been flooded in 2011. And so if you have the opportunity to watch that on YouTube, it's a speech that's been watched more than any other speech in the history of the Senate. And I think you'll see an answer to your question. So I'm not, as I said earlier, I consider myself to be the opposite of Donald Trump. But I am not worried about whether I can go up against him. I'm not worried about whether I'm tough enough to deal with him. I think he's a bully, and as somebody who was a school superintendent, I know what you do with a bully on a schoolyard. And one thing you don't do is play into their hands. And one thing you do is isolate them for what they're doing. I mean, think about this. Here's a guy, and again, as I said earlier, my state is a third. And here's a guy who got elected, among other things, attacking John McCain's patriotism. A guy who is in the Hanoi Hilton for 5 years in solitary confinement, was given the opportunity to leave and wouldn't leave because they said, we know you're an admiral's son and you can get out. And McCain said, that's not the way this works. It's when you get there, and the earlier you get there, the earlier you get to leave. And he stayed for 5 years. This guy with his bone spurs, who didn't even go to Vietnam, tried to make John McCain into a laughingstock. And it was repeated over and over again on Fox News and repeated over and over again all over this country. When if a kid in my household did that to John McCain, whatever you do in the 21st century, wash their mouth out with soap. Or if your parent or your grandparents said that about, John McCain, you'd say, we apologize. That's not going to happen again at our dinner table. And we lost something of ourselves in the last election, that basic decency that we come to expect from each other. And to have somebody in the White House who can't model the most basic behavior of politeness and civility, who's turning our border into a symbol of nativist hostility, who believes that our differences are weakness and not strengths, somebody who doesn't believe in the separation of powers or the independence of the judiciary or the freedom of the press, all the things that New Hampshire has fought for over the years, who doesn't, I don't think, even believes in our democracy, who believes I alone can fix it, which is what he said when he ran. That's the opposite of how this is supposed to work. And I think we need somebody who's tough enough to engage the American people again in this democratic project, because it belongs to us. There is no one else to ride to the rescue. Jefferson said that only citizens can answer the alarm bells at night. That's true. And the other point that you were making earlier, Lincoln said, we must never be enemies, we must be friends. This is talking during the Civil War, beginning, middle, and end. And if he could feel that way during the Civil War, we should be able to feel that way now. And I'll get out of here because I know you got a place to go, but let me just say, this country was not founded on the idea that we would agree with each other. That wasn't the point. The point was the opposite of that. It was founded on the idea that we would disagree with each other. And because they had disagreements, and they knew we would have disagreements. That was the point of living in what they called a republic, what we call a democracy. You have your point of view, and I have my point of view. But the idea was, out of those disagreements, we would forge not some lazy consensus or some weak compromise, but we would actually forge a more imaginative and durable solution than any king or tyrant could come up with on their own. That's the whole point of it. And that's what we've lost in our national politics. And I think we need a president who's tough enough to understand that we live in a country with a huge number of diverse points of view, But we have an obligation together to drive the country forward, to preserve the democracy and to preserve America's place in the world. And some choices are better than other choices. And I believe that's what we need out of the next president, and that's why I decided to run. So I hope being nice is not a disqualifying thing for being president. I'll tell you this, after the Cruz speech on the floor, my daughter Caroline was watching it in her room in college with her roommates, and it came on, and she heard me, and she said, "Uh-oh, I've heard that voice before." and every time there was a newspaper article that came out after that said, "Mild-mannered Michael Bennet, blah, 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 blah," they would like circle the mild-mannered, roll their eyes, and send it to me. So I'm tough enough.
Good.
And I appreciate your asking. Good. Well, that's good. So next time we'll arm wrestle. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. All right.
Good luck.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks again for coming.
Really enjoyed
Tell me your
getting
name.
to know you. Nancy Hamilton. Yeah. Former school teacher.
Oh, really?
5
What did
years.
you teach?
Oh, middle school math and science.
It takes a special person to teach middle school kids.
You gotta be a little crazy, yeah.
Especially
yeah.
math and science. Thank you. All right, let's go. Ollie. Completely fine.
All right.
All right.
Headed to.
How are we doing on time?
Great.
We are?
Yes.
Well, that was a good town hall.
That was nice.
Rely
People
them.
had good
You can
questions.
Rely on them.
Are you tough enough?
Well, clearly she thought so. At the
I
end.
know, at the end she thought so. I should bring the girls with me and they could tell them.
They can tell them you're tough enough.
They could tell them.
What are you looking for?
Water tonight.
So for this next house party,
Yep.
we have, if you start it right at 4:30 when you get there, we have an hour and then 15 minutes to do
Okay.
press and then we'll get on the road.
Was that guy we were talking about there for that?
He was.
Okay.
Yeah, he just got everything. And talked to people at the
Okay.
end as well.
How far is this next place?
It's 14 minutes away.
Oh. Right on time.
Was the coffee shop in this town?
Beautiful downtown Dover, New Hampshire.
Yes.
It was right back there, I think. It was near where we, we went through past the law firm last time.
It is nice down there.
The moon's up. Over the mill.
What are Caroline and Helena up to today?
Helena called me back. So I don't know, I haven't talked to him. Do you think this is going straight up the hill out Ollie or left?
Straight.
I think it's straight. There's the Daily Democrat.
Foster's. Oh, that's the paper that Foster's Daily Democrat. That's the paper that Margaret Smith put the op-ed in.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's owned by Seacoast Online, which I think has several small dailies.
I think this might even be too much for C-SPAN's viewers.
The driving.
The driving. Yeah. Although, did you hear that guy say, I saw your book talk?
Yeah.
He said, I saw your book talk on C-SPAN 2.
It was the one from San Francisco.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'd forgotten about that.
Did you guys figure out your Thanksgiving plans?
I don't know.
He's gonna cook.
Oh yeah, what are you gonna make? Is this a chili holiday?
No, this could be, you know, what is not really chicken vindaloo or turkey vindaloo, but my whole baked chicken in aluminum foil. That's good.
2 extra seats at the table.
It's a crowd pleaser.
That and chocolate chip cookies, and you said.
There.
Okay, so that's my son Douglas. He's a friend of Paul Horvath, who I think you know.
Yeah.
And Liz was.
Yeah.
Okay. That's Sydney.
It's a wonderful photograph.
Okay.
How old is she now?
13.
It's amazing.
Well. Hi. You're probably wondering why I brought you all together. And I brought you all together for really a great reason and an old New Hampshire reason. And that is I am trying hard to keep alive what makes New Hampshire the perfect breeding ground for presidential candidates. And fortunately, I found a live one. So I'm not going to take up much of your time. I'm just going to introduce to you Senator Martin Bennet. That is 2 N's and 1 T.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a grandson whose name is Emmett, and that's 2 E's, 2 M's, and 2 T's. So I'm conscious of that repetition of letters. We have a field of candidates who are participating in dog and pony shows. We call them debates. They're not really debates. They're gotcha opportunities in 30 seconds or 60 seconds to answer a complex question. Makes no sense. This is a chance to hear from candidates and for them to hear from you. And so without saying anything else, I would like to invite you to share with us just exactly what brings you here to the First in the Nation primary.
Thank you very much, Marjorie. Thank you. Let's give her a round of applause for having us. I am extremely grateful to have the chance, Marjorie, to be here with all of you and in this beautiful place. What an incredible house and what an amazing setting, beautiful river out there, and grateful that all of you are willing to take some time out of your day to spend some time with me. I'm going to try to be brief at the outset because I'd really like to spend the time taking whatever questions or criticisms or observations you have about any topic, because we've got a lot of things going on all at once, and that's the way that I learn, and that makes this evening really important for me as well. But maybe I'll say a few words about me, because Marjorie was so kind not to actually go through my introduction. First of all, let me say this. If you want to read an incredibly incisive critique of the nominating process and basically our political system, you should read the op-ed that she had in the paper yesterday. What paper was it? The Herald. The Herald. It is a phenomenal, beautifully written piece, but also very nuanced, and I just really appreciate it. I read it on the plane on the way up. I can't see you because I'm worried that you're hiding behind there.
But I am.
Oh, okay. Well, I just screwed up. And
I thought I was so clever.
no, and that's much better. I didn't know whether you were about to gang up on me or something. And but let me introduce myself. My name's Michael Bennet. I am a senator from Colorado. My wife Susan and I moved there almost 25 years ago. I followed her there. She is a public interest environmental lawyer. She wanted to work for a group called the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund, which now is called Earth Justice, and she became the head of the Rocky Mountain region. I followed her out there, and I was mostly trying to stop practicing law, and I went to work in business and did that for almost a decade. And then ended up becoming the superintendent of the Denver Public Schools, which is a school district of 95,000 kids, about $1 billion budget. And I'm happy to talk about that tonight if people are interested. It was a very challenging but incredibly rewarding period of my life. It was from that job that I was appointed to the Senate to begin with. I had to run in 2010, a terrible year for Democrats all across the country. That was the rise of the Tea Party that year, which has become sort of metastasized into the Freedom Caucus, which is a group of people who have utterly immobilized our exercise in self-government. I won that race barely. I think it was by less than 3 percentage points, less than 2 percentage points. And then I ran again in 2016, which was also turned out to be a terrible year for Democrats, barely survived that race. I am the only candidate in this race who's won 2 national elections in a swing state, in a purple state. Thank you. Thank you. And actually, you know, I think that's why I come to this work the way that I do, because I didn't put a set of issue papers together, you know, just for this campaign. I didn't figure out what my position on health care was in the last 10 minutes. I've got a set of issues that I've been working on over the past 10 years in a state that is exactly a third Republican, a third Democratic, and a third independent, a state where I feel like I've got the responsibility to represent everybody in the state, whether they agree with me or whether they don't, and a state where I've spent a lot of nights on evenings like this in places in counties where I'll never win more than 30% of the vote ever, no matter what I do, no matter how charming I am, just because of our politics, but feeling like it's not a burden in any sense, but an obligation and a responsibility to try to stitch, you know, the people in my state together again and to stitch the people in the country together again, which I think is really what we've got to do. I mean, beating Donald Trump is essential, but it's not enough. We've got to figure out how to govern the country again. And if you want to, the reason I'm here today, by the way, is that I was filling out the paperwork and paying my fee for the First in the Nation primary. So thank you very much for allowing me to do that.
$1,000 check is appreciated.
And it was good. And they pointed out when I was there, Gary Hart, when he was running, also a son of Colorado, showed up with dollar bills to pay his fee because he collected it from people across the state. Gary very kindly wrote an op-ed piece in the USA Today this week endorsing my candidacy and explaining how you can go from one to leading the Democratic field if you're lucky enough to do well in New Hampshire. So thank you on behalf of Gary for doing what you did for Gary, and we're trying to do the same thing this time. The agenda that I have put forward, you know, on healthcare and on climate and on the economy generally is one I think that can give us a chance of not just coalescing the 9 million or the Democratic base, which we have to do, but also winning back some of the 9 million people that voted twice for Donald Trump and twice for Barack Obama and once for Donald Trump. I know it's hard to imagine that there are such people, but there are such people, and they have been voting in a sense out of desperation because they're living in an economy that really hasn't worked well for them, and it hasn't for most Americans. If I had to summarize the last 10 years of town hall meetings, it's people coming and saying, Michael, we're working really hard, but no matter what we do, we can't afford some combination of housing, healthcare, higher education, or early childhood education. In other words, we can't afford a middle-class life. And for the families I used to work for in the Denver Public Schools, most of whose kids are living in poverty, what they would say is, we're killing ourselves, but no matter what we do, we can't get our kids out of poverty. And that is an anecdotal reflection of the way our economy has not worked over the last 50 years, when you've seen all the economic growth benefit the people at the very top, and nobody else. And a democracy can't last very long under those circumstances, and that's even before you introduce Donald Trump into our bloodstream, because we're now in the position of the huge opportunity cost of having somebody like Trump as our president. I mean, just look at this weekend. If you look at his Twitter feed over the weekend, if anybody in any business in New Hampshire spent their weekend doing that, they would be sitting with the HR professionals in the HR department of their company, having them tell them that they got to stop doing it, because if they keep doing it, they're going to lose their job. And if the response from that employee was, oh, you don't need to worry about that, I'm a stable genius, which is what Donald Trump has been saying, they spend the day cleaning out their desk. And yet, what was happening while he was doing that, and while we were distracted by all of that? Iran was doubling the amount of centrifuges they were using to enrich uranium. China was signing a trade deal with countries from all over the world that represent 50% of the world's economy, and we were barely even at the meeting. The reverberations of what the president did by abandoning the Kurds in northern Syria were happening not just in that part of the world, but all over the world. And so Donald Trump has treated this like it is his own reality TV show, but it is our reality. And from my perspective, much more important than that, it's our kids' reality and our grandkids' reality. And we are going to be judged on how we leave this place to them. And right now, I can tell you this, if we go through another 10 years like the last 10 years, we are going to be the first generation of Americans who leaves less opportunity, not more, to our kids and our grandkids. And I find that unacceptable. As a parent of 3 kids, I think it's unacceptable. As somebody who worked in the public school system, I think it's unacceptable, and I don't think we have to do it. But we're going to have to figure out how to construct a politics that actually unifies the American people, which is not the same thing as saying we have to agree with each other all the time. That's not the way a democracy is supposed to work. But Abraham Lincoln said it well when he said, we must be friends, we can never be enemies. In the context of the Civil War, he said that over and over again. And what he meant was that we need to be friends of the democracy. We all need to do our share to make sure this incredible experiment that started not very far from here is something that we can sustain for the next 200 years. And that's what I believe is at stake in this election. I think our democracy is fraying. I think it's at serious risk, and the only people that can save it is us. And what we do in this election is going to matter for that. It's not the only thing that's important, because I believe we're going to be fighting for this for the rest of my life, for election after election after election after election. But we shouldn't be burdened by that. We should feel like we have an incredible rendezvous ourselves with destiny, and that all of us has a role to play. It's the opposite of I alone can fix it, which is what the president said over and over again when he was running for office. That's the opposite of how it's supposed to work. So couldn't be more delighted than to be here with all of you tonight, and I'm happy to stop and take whatever questions anybody has on any topic. Don't feel the need to restrict yourself to anything I talked about. I want to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Is that good? Yes? Sure.
The only difference between you and me is I have 2 T's at the end of my name.
The difference between you and me is that you spell your name correctly and I spell my name incorrectly.
So I have a couple of questions, and the answers for you can be yes or no.
Okay.
Okay. So my background is as a surgeon. I helped write the DRGs for the urology part. I was on Hillary's failed healthcare plan, and I've been in medicine up until a few years ago, my whole life. So the issue. I
hope you're going to ask me a non-healthcare question, because
because healthcare really is going to be what will put you on the ticket or not. So the question that I have is there are 2. One involves the health care plan that you as a senator and all senators and House of Representatives and the President share. Everybody in this room would love to have your health care plan. Mm-hmm. So are you willing to give up the best health care plan in the world, win or lose,
I already did 10 years ago. So the health care plan I am on is the Kaiser plan that my wife gets from. My wife get no, but I don't. But what I want you to know is, for those 10 years, I have never taken the subsidy from the federal government for my health care.
You're one of very few of your compatriots who used the federal health care plan available to the House and the Senate.
Yeah, I don't use it.
I know you don't.
Oh, yeah.
No, you're
right.
okay. Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I can't speak for those other mugs.
The next question is yes or no. When you get on the stage and are discussing health care with your progressive candidates, who are obviously leading, except for one right now, would you be willing to ask them if they would give up their health care plan for Medicare for all?
Yes, I would. But and Bernie would say, if he was here, he'd say, "Yeah, I would, because it'll be better." That's what he would say. And I want that is what he would say. I'm sorry, Marjorie. Did I?
No, you go right ahead.
Okay, but here I'm going to use this as an opportunity. Thank you. I didn't know if you had something you wanted to add, but I'm going to use this as an opportunity to actually talk about the differences in the race, because I don't support Medicare for all. I don't support it, and I think it's not the right plan on the substance, and politically it's not the right plan. And my bottom line is this: I do not want to spend the next 10 years fighting a losing battle for Medicare for all. Our kids don't have time for us to do that. And instead, we need to be focused on driving economic opportunity for everybody in this country, providing universal coverage through a public option, and by auto-enrolling people in Medicare, or in Medicaid and in CHIP, which is the kids' insurance program, fighting on climate change to make sure we actually get started before we're all dead, so that our kids can actually have a planet that's not incinerated, and reforming the government. We got a lot of stuff to do. Overturning Citizens United so that we can take money out of our politics and put people in. I appreciate Bernie Sanders' ideological commitment to Medicare for all. He's been completely consistent since the early 70s on his position, and he's telling the truth about it, and what it will cost, and how at least he'll pay for half of it, which is by raising taxes on the middle class. I think it is the wrong thing for Democrats to be putting forward in this election, and I hope we won't. I hope we're going to nominate somebody who's got a better plan. And by the way, this isn't because it's a big idea. I just think it's the wrong idea. I mean, I have a plan nobody has ever heard of, I don't think, that would reduce childhood poverty in America by 40%. It's just a change to our tax code that would eliminate $2 a day poverty for kids living in America. It would cost 3% of what Medicare for all would cost. If you think about the kids that I used to work for in my district and kids all over New Hampshire, that would mean a lot more to them than Medicare for all. Bernie's got an ideological commitment to it, and that's fine, but we shouldn't be following him over the edge, in my humble opinion.
I asked you a question months ago about the achievement gap, which it certainly helps out with. But what I want to ask about is vocational training for education. I am a public school teacher. You were a superintendent. Or former superintendent. I thought you could...
Let me just get on my knees, because you're the teacher and I'm the superintendent. Yeah.
But what I was hoping you could talk about is potentially with your upcoming presidency, how you would adapt or change from Betsy DeVos, the current Department of Ed, and perhaps help those who are vocationally inclined due to the dearth of vocational settings that we have in our current public education.
Well, first of all, thank you for teaching. And second, that basically is my education plan, because what I've said, in addition to the free preschool part, is that we have to figure out, and this should be our focus, we have to figure out how to put the 70% of kids who graduate from high school and do not go to college in the position of earning a living wage when they graduate from high school. There's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't. But today, we don't prepare them to do what the economy pays a living wage. We only prepare them to do what prepares them to earn a minimum wage. And if you start earning the minimum wage when you graduate from high school, you will earn far less over your lifetime than if you start by earning a living wage. And the way I propose to do that is by using federal resources to pay for the incremental fixed costs of aligning the community college system and our high school systems, and frankly going all the way to middle school in a system where kids in the 6th grade are going to know what they have to learn by the time they graduate from high school to earn a living wage, which, by the way, probably will change in this economy between the time they're in the 6th grade and the time they're graduating. Today, we have a system that's not even training them for the 21st century jobs we have right now, because it's basically a system designed for the 18th century. And so I actually view this as low-hanging fruit that could transform the lives of millions of Americans and transform the American economy, just as our education system transformed the economy when we invented high school to begin with. We need to reinvent high school for the 21st century, and if we do, we're going to be able to have those sorts of opportunities. I was in Manchester not that long ago and met a young woman who's at in a technical high school there. I don't remember the name of it, but Manchester School of Technology. I can't remember it because that's the obvious name for a technological high school in Manchester. That's tricky. But she was working with her team, you know, the other students, on building a hovercraft. And I said to her finally at the end, we had this long conversation about her education and what she was learning. And at the end I said, well, what are you doing after you graduate? Because she's a senior. And she looked at me, she had a huge smile on her face, and she said, I'm going to be an underwater welder. And I said, I'll bet that job pays well. And she said, it absolutely does. I mean, that's what we could be doing. And while we're at it, on the question of how we pay people, we got to pay teachers in this country like they're the professionals that they are. And in America today, the system we have is a system that was designed when we had a labor market that discriminated against women and said, you got two professional choices. One's being a teacher, and there you go, and one's being a nurse. And if you don't want to be a nurse, then come teach Julius Caesar every year for 30 years of your life, and we'll pay you a ridiculously low salary that no one else in your college class would accept because nobody's going to ever ask you to do anything else. But if you make it 30 years, we'll give you a pension that sounded pretty good back then because your spouse would probably die before you. That is our system, and no other enterprise in America pays people that way anymore. And unless we can think about how to do it differently, we're going to continue to lose 50% of the people from the profession in the first 5 years. And I'm not running to be the president of America's school board, but it seems to me that we have a national interest in figuring out where the next couple million teachers are going to come from in this country, and how we move from a place where if you're born poor in the United States, your chances of graduating with a college degree or its equivalent are roughly 9 in 100 if you're born poor.
Real quick, I'm just afraid I'm throwing you under the bus.
Okay, well then I definitely don't want to call on you. No, I'm kidding. No, go ahead. I'm kidding.
No, I mean it. I mean it. I don't. Oh. I'm wondering whether I want you to do this.
Why?
Have we talked to your wife?
My wife? Yeah, she thinks I should do it. She definitely wants me to do it, and she doesn't have any personal ambition for me. She just thinks that I'm the right person, you know. It's not just because she wants to keep me out of the house. Actually, I'll close on this. We have these 3 daughters, as I told you earlier. I consulted them before I ran and said, what do you think? Because I have not spent my whole life running for president. I haven't, you know. I've done a lot of other things, and then I was in the Senate for 10 years. But I started to think, I don't believe anybody else has kind of diagnosed the problems the way I have, and I don't think people are offering solutions that are going to unite us. And I'm worried about that. So anyway, I went home and I said, what do you think? Should I run? And the 15-year-old said, absolutely. absolutely you should run. She was 14, by the way, at the time. So you absolutely should run. And I'm thinking, I'm proud of that. Like, she thinks that much of my service to the country and my ideas. And then, like, in the 2 sentences that then followed, it became clear that she saw this as an incredible opportunity to have me out of the house for her 15th year. But my oldest daughter said to me, and she's 20 now, she's a college sophomore, she said, Dad, if you run and you tell the truth and you lose, no one can fault you for it. That's what she said. And I said, that is good, Caroline, because there is no other reason for me to run. There isn't. And there's no other way I can win. It's the only way I can win. So 2 months or so ago, the Des Moines Register had been meeting with, which is the largest paper in Iowa, the editorial board had been meeting with all the candidates, and they wrote editorials after the meetings with the candidates. And the one that they wrote after I was there had the headline that said, Michael Bennet pounds truth into this campaign. And at the end of the editorial, it said, Iowans, you know, even if you thought you were going with somebody else, you should give this guy another look, because he's talking about things in a way that other people aren't really talking about it. And I was able to send that editorial to Caroline Bennet, and at least I think I've kept faith with her in this effort. But I don't want to lose. I want to win. And I think it is important for us to have a president who's going to tell us the truth. I think it's important for us to have a children who actually cares about our kids and our grandkids. And the current president doesn't. He doesn't care about your kids or your grandkids. I'm not even sure he cares about his own kids. But I know he doesn't care about mine. And that ought to change. You get the last one, and I'm gone. Okay.
No, don't go.
I gotta go. Gotta go.
I'm not sure exactly how to ask this question.
That's okay.
I'm not, although I'm very liberal, I agree that the top candidates polling now are unlikely to be our best choice. But I also have observed at least one other Midwesterner who is also a senator, who seems honest, experienced, credible, and so I was wondering if you would speak to how you would incorporate some of the other potential candidates into your cabinet.
That's a wonderful way of asking that question. I thought it was maybe going in the other direction. Look, this goes back to the point about public service. You know, we have spent, basically since Ronald Reagan was president, we've had decades and decades and decades of denigrating, you know, public service. And by the way, Ronald Reagan would never recognize himself in this Republican Party. He would never recognize himself in the Freedom Caucus. You know, he said explicitly, you know, back when he was saying government is the problem, you remember that? But he said, I'm not here to dismantle it. These guys are here to dismantle it. And I think we need to, our problems are so vast and the challenges are so great that we need the very best people in the country. And some of those people probably are other people in this race, and some of those people are probably people that have never worked in government in their lives. You know, we have to figure out how to deal with the health care costs in America. We've got to figure out how to do it. I can tell you, no one in Washington is smart enough to do that by themselves. They need to have people from outside who are working in it every single day to help us figure out how to resolve it. Nobody there is smart enough to figure out on their own, or even really asking the question, what are we going to do with all the dislocation because of artificial intelligence? You know, we need the best and the brightest from all over America to come and be part of this challenge, looking to the future. And I think we have an amazing opportunity in front of us if we can just get past Donald Trump and if we can get past the daily ritual on the cable and into actually trying to fix the country. So I have always believed in having a diverse group of people and the highest quality folks that I can find. I'm often asked, well, how did you do this and how did you do that? And I say the trick is finding people who are a lot better at doing their job than you would ever be at doing their job and marshaling them together to overcome the challenges and seize the opportunities that we have. And I do think we obviously have enormous challenges, but you can't lose sight of the incredible opportunities we have. And again, we're the only ones that can seize it. Nobody else can seize it. And if I don't see any of you again, which I hope I will many times, but if I don't, what I would say to you is no matter who you end up supporting in this race, no matter who you end up voting for, please plan to make it your business to get everybody who is eligible in this country to vote in the next election. Because if we do that, we will be able to come out of this period with the momentum we need to be able to address the challenges that Zoe and others need us to address. Marjorie, thank you very much for having me, Marjorie. I appreciate it. Sorry to...
Thank you. Well, before you were born, there was a president who said, ask not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for the country. That brought me to Washington after graduate school because we really believed that we could make a difference and that we had an obligation to make a difference. And it has been a while since that philosophy has been on the foreground of the world in which we live, and we better get back to that or we're in real trouble. And I want to thank you, but I also want to thank everyone in this room who on a Wednesday afternoon at 4:30, not the ideal time, dealing with Route 4, nonetheless came to hear a credible, thoughtful, honorable candidate. And if we had more of us, and maybe more of you, but at least you, then we're in good shape. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Campaign 2020. Watch our live coverage of the presidential candidates on the campaign